We've got 14 so far. We'll give this another minute or two for people to come in. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate you joining us tonight. All right. We'll go ahead and get started to be respectful of everybody's time. So thanks to everyone for joining us today. So this is our first LGBTQ panel of the year. And so my name is Nick Dunn. I am the mayor's spokesperson and press secretary, but I am also proud to be the office's LGBTQ liaison. And so I'm excited to introduce members of our administration today and also introduce some of our key organizations from the community to our city leaders. After our folks from our administration speak, we will turn it over to the organizations. So if you are with a local organization, when asked, please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute and speak about your organization. And we'll have time at the end for public questions and comments. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our esteemed mayor, Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everyone. My name is Mayor Tashara Jones. I use the she, her pronouns, and I'm excited to be here with you this evening. Excuse me. Tonight, we are hosting this town hall, both from my administration to hear from you and to introduce you to two very important members of my administration, Dr. Mati Slachwayo Davis, our Director of the Department of Health, and Monica Mo Del Villar, our Executive Director of the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency. Before I provide my updates, I'll first turn it over to Dr. Mati. Dr. Mati?
Thank you so much, Mayor Jones. Good evening to everyone joining us today. I'm incredibly grateful to Mayor Jones for convening this important town hall and providing a safe space for us to share our truths. Thank you for inviting me to join in the listening and sharing sessions that will take place. This hits home for me. My background is I'm an infectious diseases physician. I hold a public health degree, but my area of specialty is in the care of people living with HIV. And I did a dedicated fellowship around sexually transmitted infections. And throughout that time, it was my honor and my privilege to be able to care for LGBTQ plus individuals and advocate for equity. And so this means a lot to me. And I look forward to not only being able to provide, hopefully, what I believe are strategies moving forward, but to hear you and to listen so that I can do a better job of being an ally. Throughout my career, I've been passionate about my public service being equity-centered, and the City of St. Louis Department of Health staff works each and every day to ensure ultimate health for all is a pillar in all of our public health initiatives. When it comes to LGBTQ plus individuals, cultural competency training for our staff, increasing condom access locations, and an HIV prevention program that focuses on the whole person are some of the ways we work to increase health equity for our community. Despite advances in awareness and legal protections, we know, like it is clear, that LGBTQ plus individuals continue to face health disparities. So to spotlight the need for our gathering today, I'd like to briefly share the results of some studies that have been published recently to over the last 7 years. So in 2015, the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities issued a report that identified that the LGBTQ plus community as a health disparity population because members have less access to healthcare than non-LGBTQ plus populations. Unacceptable. A meta-analysis of UK population health surveys published in the BMC Psychiatry in 2016 found that LGBTQ plus members of the community are more than twice as likely as heterosexual men and women to have mental health disorder in their lifetime. Not acceptable. In 2017, there was a national representative survey of LGBTQ plus people conducted by the Center for American Progress that revealed that nearly 1 in 10 members of the community reported that a healthcare professional refused to see them in the prior year because of their actual or perceived sexual orientation. Unacceptable. The study also reported that nearly 3 in 10 transgender people stated that healthcare providers would not see them because of their gender identity. A large cohort study published in the publication of Pediatrics in 2018 found that transgender and or gender nonconforming youth were several times more likely to have attention deficit disorders and depressive disorders than non-transgender and or gender conforming youth. These are just a few of the studies that underscore the need for action and for us to convene in these ways, because if data truly drives our decision-making, these studies demonstrate the importance of having this dialogue today and sustaining what comes out of our efforts to help us improve access to healthcare for LGBTQ plus individual in our community and overall better health outcomes for the city of St. Louis. I'd like to now pass the microphone to Monica Villar, Executive Director for the City of St. Louis Civil Rights Enforcement Agency. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you, Dr. Madi, and thank you everyone who has joined in creating this space and having this conversation today. I obviously want first and foremost to thank Mayor Jones for having this town hall and for making this a priority in her administration, but also for having the foresight to put absolutely amazing people in her administration like Dr. Madi to rise to the challenges that face St. Louis City today. So as Dr. Madi mentioned, Mayor Jones has tasked me with heading the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency for the city. Our mission is to eradicate discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations. We do this through investigations and education to the community to ensure that people know their rights. What we want ultimately is to ensure that all city residents and visitors are treated fairly, that everyone can live, love, play, and work in the city regardless of their identity. But we know that issues abound. Members of the LGBT community have been discriminated against in a variety of ways. Over 1 in 5 LGBTQ Americans have experienced discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity when applying for jobs, for being paid equally to their coworkers, or for earning promotions. 1 in 3 LGBT people of color have felt discrimination based on sexual orientation or their gender identity. And we know that issues can be even more dire for the transgender community, particularly in this state. We know that over 80% of transgender individuals have experienced harassment or mistreatment on the jobs or had to take some sort of steps to avoid that type of harassment or mistreatment on the job. LGBTQ St. Louisans deserve better from the state and from the city in which they live and love. So my North Star in all my work has always been listening to the needs of the people first. I come from the American Civil Liberties Union of Missouri, where I worked tirelessly on behalf of advocacy of the LGBTQ community. It truly was a roller coaster, and it was a battle day in and day out to ensure that not only is everyone looked at as a human being, first and foremost, but that they're respected in their uniqueness and their individuality. And so that has always served as a North Star in the work that I have done. I do come with a little bit of federal experience after working in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and am just thrilled and over the moon to be able to come join Mayor Tashara Jones and her administration in working with the LGBTQ community. I'm personally looking in growing CREA in its visibility and the number of inquiries that we get that assist LGBT individuals, and in targeting resources for these populations in the city to help us be more efficient and to help us target the challenges that we're having in the city. So with that, I will turn over to Mayor Jones, knowing I'm sure questions will be coming later. And again, I appreciate being here tonight.
Thank you both. And before I get started, I'd like to recognize our elected officials on the call, including the Board of Aldermen's first ever LGBTQ caucus members, Alderwoman Tina Peel, Alderman Shane Cohn, and Alderman Bill Stevens. And I also see Alderwoman Annie Rice also on the call. As you probably heard me say before, I want to build a St. Louis where everyone can succeed, regardless of the color of their skin, who they love, how they worship, or any identity they hold. And I still carry that with me every time I step into this office. Last summer, I had the pleasure of speaking at a town hall hosted by Court, and I attended several Pride events and parades where I got to meet and hear from so many of you. I hope to address some of the questions and concerns I heard when I met some of you. First, I think what's at the top of everyone's mind is getting justice for Kiwi Herring. I had our staff look into what procedures were followed after her murder and found that while there is still an internal investigation and report submitted to the Circuit Attorney's Office, we are unclear on the results of that report and what actions she plans to take. So while the judicial system is a separate branch of government I have no authority over, I am looking to see what justice for Kiwi looks like moving forward. For example, today I celebrated the 1-year anniversary of our Cops and Clinicians program and our 911 diversion program with behavioral health response. In just a short time, we've seen that alternatives to policing, including deploying licensed clinical social workers and mental health professionals to 911 calls, make everyone safer and ensure that people in crisis receive the help they truly need rather than just arrest or hospitalization. I will continue to pursue proactive and effective solutions that don't only rely on a police response. And I hope that you take some time to think about what that proactive justice looks like to you and share those thoughts with our office. The other issue I know many of you are concerned about is how we are supporting our unhoused neighbors this winter. We have been fortunate to receive millions of dollars from the American Rescue Plan Act from the federal government and allocated $7 million specifically for emergency beds. The city of St. Louis is currently funding 637 beds, including 155 emergency beds, which is more than we had pre-pandemic as a result of this funding. However, we realize that that's not enough, as COVID has strained the availability of space due to social distancing and pushing the city and shelter staff and volunteers to their absolute breaking point. This isn't sustainable, and there are deeper systemic issues that need to be addressed. My administration's goal is not to bring people through the revolving door of continuous services that only treat the symptoms of poverty and homelessness. The best way to reduce the burden on our providers by getting as many people as possible into permanent and supportive housing with wraparound services. This won't happen overnight, but we are using every available resource to protect our unhoused from the elements now, while we're also moving on these more permanent housing solutions. We do continue to pursue policies that reimagine public safety and protect members of the LGBTQ+ community. Last year, my office partnered with Moho Justice Coalition to hold a training session with my staff, members of my cabinet, as well as police and fire leadership on the proper use of pronouns and acknowledging sex work as work, not a criminal offense. We are working on future trainings on that front. We are also exploring innovative ways that we can end dead naming and misgendering in the city record collection and hope to have more on that soon. But in addition, we're looking into the formulation of an LGBTQ advisory board, as many other cities have, to advise our office on future legislative and policy priorities. A draft of what that could look like is in the works, and Nick Dunn will be reaching out to your organizations for your input once that draft is complete, to ensure that it is an equitable board representative of our diverse queer community. We also have numerous positions on the city's volunteer boards and commissions. We recently launched a portal that makes it easier to see who currently serves on our boards, their terms, as well as a streamlined application process to make it more accessible. While we would love more representation on all our boards, I would especially love to see some LGBTQ plus representation on our Civil Rights Enforcement Commission board and our HIV Health Advisory Board. And on a lighter note, we're hiring. We have more than 1,000 different positions open, and I would love to welcome more members of our community into city government to support our residents. We have open positions from everything from utility workers for parks, recreation, and forestry, to streets and refuse workers, to social workers within the Department of Health or Human Services. City jobs pay a minimum of $15 per hour, and full-time employees are eligible for health insurance benefits that do include some coverage for PrEP and HIV treatment, as well as hormone replacement therapy and gender reassignment surgery. Lastly, I know a lot of organizations, especially smaller ones, have not been able to participate in the RFP process to receive city funding. In my first year in office, we've become acutely aware of the barriers some small organizations face for applying for and reporting on the funding the city provides. While I know the Missouri Foundation for Health provides technical support for grant writing and data reporting, we hope to overcome these barriers and find new and innovative ways for all of you to apply for block grants and other available funding sources. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Nick Dunn.
Thank you, Mayor Jones, and thank you, Dr. Mahdi and Mo, for your remarks. So at this point, we are going to open it up for the local organizations that represent our community to speak for about 5 minutes. So I see some familiar names, but if you could raise your hand, I would be happy to give you that platform. So the first person that I see is Sayer Johnson from MTUG. So promoting you to panelists. You should be able to turn on your camera now.
Hi. My phone did strange things, but I think I'm here now.
All right, go right ahead, Sayer.
Okay, hi. I just want to thank you so much for having MTUG at the table. Mayor Jones, I just want you to know that you are the first mayor that's actually brought us to a table in a proactive way rather than a reactive way. And I just want to hold space for that as an indicator of your leadership, I really appreciate that. And we want to be part of solutions to support trans expansive humans in our region. And I hear this, that you all do too. And so I really appreciate that. And I'm here to say that MTUG is thriving. We are doing well. We are refocusing. We are revamping. We are really going to center BIPOC leadership in the 2.0 of the Metro Trans Umbrella Group. We're building up different structures and we're creating systems where there were none. But I don't really want to use our time to talk about us because really we're good. Like we're good. But there's a huge gap that you mentioned already in the services that do not exist in this city, and that is housing. And so I want to hold up an organization that's up and coming. I don't know if they were invited to this or not. I don't necessarily have consent to speak on their behalf at all. I just want to hold up an organization called Thistle, which is going to be a nonprofit in this region that's going to center trans expansive humans and unhoused and precariously housed and challengingly housed humans and homeownership and moving towards that interdependence. And so I just want to state that if you're centering LGBTQIA humans with your administration, I'm going to encourage it centering T humans with housing because it's a huge gap that is not being met. MTUG is not going to meet that need. And I just want to put our energy towards holding up that organization that I have a lot of faith in, that I believe can change the way that unhoused trans expansive humans are treated in our region. And so that's all I got to say. I just want to really appreciate you bringing us to the table and in a proactive way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sayer. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you, Sayer. I appreciate your time. I'm going to move you back to attendees so we can make room for our next speaker, who is Jordan Braxton from Pride St. Louis. Jordan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Go right ahead.
Well, good evening, everyone. And again, thank you. Hello, Dr. Monty. Nice to see you again. Hello, Mayor. Nice to see you again. And Mo, it's nice to meet you finally. So I'm here for Pride St. Louis, and everyone knows that Pride St. Louis, we are the organization that puts on Pride Fest every year. And we are back together again, yes, after a 2-year hiatus of not having our traditional in-person festival. So we're back down here in beautiful downtown St. Louis, June 25th and 26th. So you can go to our website and register to be a vendor or whatever. But we are here because recently we had to close our Pride Center. And that broke my heart because I'm all about bringing resources and people together. And so right now we're just an online resource center where people can call or go on our website and get resources and connect those members in our community who are in need with the resources that are out there, the people that actually have social services. And also we do diversity and inclusion training. We have trained and talked to many of the departments, city departments, and also a lot of the corporations here in town, because we believe that there is room for diversity and inclusion education and training in our city and within our public leaders and our elected officials and in the corporations and organizations that we have here in St. Louis. That's basically all that I had to say. I work with many of you outside of this arena, and I want to applaud all the great work that you all do. One of the questions I have is you already talked about, Mary Jones, you talked about block grants and stuff, and I was wondering if there's any funding or anything that we can do to get our Pride Center back open.
Well, I'm not sure if any of the current funding sources in ARPA are for that, but let me check and get back to you.
Okay.
Because we allocated $135 million in the first bill, and it's in a myriad of different categories. So I don't want to misspeak and say, well, yeah, and not know for sure. But Nick is writing down your question feverishly because I have a feeling that he's going to do the research for me so we can get back to you. But it's so good to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming to our events. And thank you all for all the wonderful work you do. And hi, Dr. Monty. Thank you all very much. And I promise to stop being a pain.
No, not at all. Never, never.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jordan. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Jordan, it's amazing to see you. You look fantastic as always, and thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Indigo. I believe they are from Moho Justice. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Well, thanks for putting me on as a panelist to talk a little bit about Moho. And thank you, Mayor Jones, for the shout out for the training that we did together last summer. And we hope to continue working together with the administration on advocating for sex workers, trans people, queer people, and Black women. Our work is concerned with protecting the freedom, safety, and well-being of sex workers, and we're heartened to hear about the alternative to police mobilization solutions that we have for mental health. That's definitely one of the main concerns voiced when we surveyed the community about the challenges that sex workers which over a third of which were also transgender, in our survey voiced as major concerns, ending police violence and access to mental health resources, which are still difficult to access for many LGBTQ people, as well as the continuing to support the movement towards decriminalizing sex work in our city and ending housing discrimination against sex workers. So really excited to hear about continuing plans for stable housing options for many of our trans and sex working unhoused neighbors, and looking forward to continuing in collaboration with all the other LGBT-centered organizations here on this call and the administration.
Thank you, Indigo. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you, Indigo. All right. So the next person we've got on our list is John Martin, who is with Vivent Health. John, are you with us?
Hi there.
Hi, John.
Took a minute for my camera to start up. Sorry for the pause there. So I'm John Martin, the Director of Prevention Services at Vivent Health. Some of you may be aware, Vivent Health started life more than 35 years ago as St. Louis effort for AIDS. And since that time, we've been providing support services for people living with HIV. But in 2018, we merged with a larger organization and became Vivent Health. Vivent Health is now in 4 states with more than 15, I believe 17 locations, and will continue to expand. One of the reasons for the success that Vivent Health has seen has been an embrace of the HIV medical home model. We try to have many different necessary services for people living with HIV under one roof. So trying our best to be a one-stop shop for people to have their needs addressed. At this point, we've grown from where we were to include medical, dental, behavioral health, free legal services, case management, food pantry, support for people's pets that are living with HIV. And my department, which is prevention, we do free HIV, STI, and hepatitis C testing, free at-home tests we can mail out to anyone who requests one, condom distribution, educational programming, et cetera. We see firsthand all the time the effects that the HIV epidemic has had in the LGBT community, particularly among gay and bisexual men. And we also understand the many glaring disparities that exist in various areas of health. One thing that we would like to ask, Mayor, is within your sort of hopes and expectations for addressing health outcomes among residents of St. Louis, are there any special priorities that you have to address the needs, particularly of LGBT community members?
Well, that's why we're having this discussion today. I can't put my finger on all of the needs unless we have the opportunity to have these open conversations and you let us know what your needs are. So I don't know what number town hall this is for us. We're doing town halls with different community stakeholders, but it is a part of my administration to try to be as open facing and transparent as possible, because this is your government and we work for you, not the other way around. We started by hiring a dynamic director of health who specializes in infectious diseases and most specifically with dealing with HIV. And so I absolutely can predict that will be a cornerstone of the things that she wants to focus on. We still do receive a lot of grant dollars from the federal government for HIV specific outreach and treatment. And so I would love to see those programs restarted and make sure that they are robust and reaching the community that the funds are intended for.
And thank you for that, Mayor Jones. If I may, I couldn't agree more. And I think that this is an area of priority for us. One of the things I like to do is be transparent about the now so that we can talk about how to get to where we need to be. We're coming out of the worst pandemic in the history of mankind, and how that's affected local public health is it's decimated our work capacity. My staff, compared to cities of similar size, are a quarter of the size of what a health department of our size should be, right? They're doing the jobs of 3, 4, 5 people. I always tell people when I first took on this job in October, we had 1 animal control specialist for the whole city, right? We had 3 disease investigators for COVID at a time where we were getting over 300 cases a day. It's just untenable, right? So I have the vision. I came in all dough-faced and bushy-tailed, thinking I was gonna enact all of these priorities, right? And even with funding, it's really difficult to do so and limited to expand what we're doing, right? So I always want to give people that basis to really be, so as a group, as we're working towards the future, we can be thoughtful about what we can do realistically. So what have we done? Well, I have a boss and a mayor who has given us the support to really expand our budget and our work capacity for the next season, who has worked to bring us a leader in the Department of Personnel who's helping to move this forward. So the second part is funding, right? We need to find funding, and is funding available? And the other area of transparency is, while I have access to a plethora of grants, right? A lot of people who do this work knows if you want money, you can find a grant for it. But again, with limited capacity, the ability to oversee those grants is limited, because some people would say, well, just get a bunch of money, contract out to as many people as possible. And that becomes really difficult to manage and to have a strategic plan and implementation and dissemination strategy that's cohesive. So what we are doing is, one of the things the health department does do well is the care of people living with HIV and STI. I do believe that one area we need to do a better job is the educational aspect of this. So you'll see and have seen a number of campaigns that we started, but there's also a lot of people doing good work, as evidenced by people on this call, right? And those silos don't serve us well. So what I'd like to really spend some time doing and hearing back from you all is, how can we do a better job of bringing together these siloed experiences and use the Department of Health's leadership and our growing work capacity, some of the funding we have available, to do a better job. Lastly, it would be really helpful for me to get feedback about some of our existing programs, the HRSA programs, the HOPWA programs, and some of the fundings we get, the work of the Planning Council. What do I need to know as a new director about how that is actually playing out in real life for the services that you all deserve to be at the highest quality and equitable? So I'll stop there, but I wanted to just put that out there for people to be thoughtful about, because what Mayor Jones got in me was a clinician and a public health expert, but not a politician. So sometimes I shoot myself in the foot, because I'll give you the real, because I think that really helps to inform where we're going, and sometimes to temper your expectations as to why isn't the city doing more, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Mahdi, and thank you, John, for joining us tonight. We will definitely be in touch for future engagements. And then let's see.
John.
Next, we have Maxi Glamour.
So many buttons to click. Hi, hello everyone.
Maxi.
How are you? My name is Maxi. I'm a drag performer. I tour the country, and I'm part of Thistle. I'm one of the founding members, and it's Trans Housing Initiative St. Louis, and we're really there to make sure that we can, bridge the gap between financial instability and trans people, and making sure that shelters are knowledgeable about, discrimination. We worked close with Charles before, so Mo, I hope we can become friends. I have a filter on with lipstick and it keeps moving, so if it freaks you out, I'm sorry. But yeah, I also I have a couple questions. Are you guys gonna lift the marijuana and drug testing for city positions? I don't know if that's something that we could ever do, Ms. Jones.
We can't lift it for all. I know that we lifted, a part of the marijuana decriminalization bill. There were some employment related provisions in that bill, but there are still some positions that do require to make sure that you're not using marijuana. So we can't. I'm pretty sure we cannot lift it for all, but there were some employment provisions in the last bill.
So like a gardener, now you can have marijuana in your system, because I think that was one.
I don't know which one.
Wonderful. I guess I'll just see how that goes. And then Dr. Mahdi, I was just wondering if you have any information about drug epidemics. I know there's a lot of fentanyl going in coke, and a lot of people are overdosing on that. And we have a big meth epidemic, and queer people use a lot of drugs. It just happens as a coping mechanism. I wonder if you could provide any insight about that and how we can maybe move forward, or yeah.
Wow, what an incredibly important question. And I feel like I may have paid you to make me look a little bit competent today, because I'm coming off the heels of some really exciting meetings that I can speak to, but there's still a lot more we need to do. And I would love to hear more from folks later on in the program. So this is an absolute tragedy. The lives that have been lost most recently in the city and the region because of the recent fentanyl overdoses are absolutely devastating, and highlight the fact that this is an area where we may have become lax over the years. If you remember back in 2017, there was this huge push with federal funding to really address this. And I think one of the things that the pandemic did that frustrates me is that a lot of health priorities were set aside while we focused and were on this one singular priority. And none of those things went away. And what that's caused over 2 and now going into year 3 is that we have lost momentum, and we've lost critical prioritization of these sectors, right? So what I have done is I've started meeting with content experts. Another thing about my leadership is I learned very early on that where your expertise ends, put your ego aside and go to the experts, and everybody wins. Everybody looks good, right? And for me, as not being an expert specifically in this field, obviously generally as a physician and public health expert, but specifically here, it was important to convene leadership. And again, going back to my pet peeve of silos, my research showed that we've had 2 different task forces in the city and region, right? A lot of siloing and duplicated efforts, but we also have a leadership group that has come together of 5 of the content experts in the region, some of whom include Dr. Kanika Cunningham, Dr. LJ Punch, and others. And so I've met with them and the mayor's office just this week to start talking about what are the short-term goals and long-term goals that we want to focus on. We've identified some preliminary funds around equitable access to Narcan and bringing that out. But Dr. Cunningham put this so beautifully. She talked about the fact that we have lost sight of building an ecosystem of wraparound care for folks entering the healthcare system who have substance abuse disorders, right? We do very, very specific and limited interventions that make us feel good. Here's some Narcan, now go back to these unsafe environments. But we need to provide an ecosystem where wraparound services, primary care, mental health support, and specific linkage to drug intervention plans are available. So they're providing me with 2 proposals for us to address. One for some short-term dollars through some grant funding at the state, my hope is, and another for me to take to the mayor's office for future funding and funds available. You may have noticed or not noticed, please follow the Department of Health's social media pages and engage and send out. We have started the first of many campaigns around education around this, which is another critical piece. But My good friend, Dr. Corey Bradley, says data is justice. And data is justice because it informs policy. And the reason why the transgender community, for example, has been so failed, is because there is inadequate data at the national level across the board to inform policy and to inform funding, right? So what we have done is we have also partnered with some epidemiologists in the healthcare systems to start to build a forward-facing dashboard using sample data. I don't have comprehensive data yet, but that's how we can start. And that data, the beauty of it, they showed me a sample of it, and it was like, for my nerd heart, I can't even tell you what it was like. They showed me geospatial zip code level data where we can predict where some of these overdoses are going to be clustered, and we can center our interventions before they go. So they are meeting with my epidemiology team on Tuesday, and we're going to hopefully start to bring, even though it's sample data informs comprehensive data, right? So that's the beginning. But in order for me to do my job, as much as I'm going to hate myself for saying this, I need you to provide accountability and to continue to dialogue with us about where we need to go. But that's the start. Again, tempering expectations. When an emergency happens, there's still city process, right? So even if I want to do something now, the ability for me to apply for a grant, get it through government processes, get board bills passed, then have the funds drawn down, and then start a program limit us. So I'm trying to be innovative about how I can use our existing partnerships for them to mobilize some of their abilities in the short term so that we can work in the long term. Does that answer your question?
It makes me have more questions, but
Kyle, he said you thought you were cute. I have more questions. Got it. I can handle that. I think more questions will get us there.
Do some of those interventions look like safe injection spots in the city of St. Louis and needle exchange programs?
Good question. So the leadership actually brought this to my attention as something that we need to discuss. You know, having only been here since October, it's important for me to find out where we were with that kind of advocacy, what the barriers are, and what we can do. If you ask me personally what we need to do, of course, that was part of my work in my clinical practice, but I need to understand what the barriers have been in the local public health and state public health arena for us to really know what to do. But I will tell you that those same leaders have come to me and said, this is what we want to do. Now, I'll tell you that their immediate ask was around equity. It was around me taking these initiatives to our federally qualified health centers and saying, can you commit to expanding the already incredible work that you're doing around that to build those ecosystems? But they also told me that they're going to provide me with budget and specific asks. And one of those priorities was around needle exchange programs as well. So I will be getting those, and then it has to go through the process. Hang with us. Please be patient. It's been hard for me. I've worked in spaces before. I'm like, problem, let's fix it tomorrow. That doesn't work the same way in government processes. So even though Mayor Jones, Mo, and I are sitting around like, let's do this now, there's steps that have to be taken. And as long as we're transparent about that, hopefully you'll start to believe the fact that you have allies right here in your cabinet leadership.
Thank you. I'll let someone else talk because I feel like I've taken so much time.
It wasn't you, it was me, but they're used to it.
You're good, Maxi. Thank you for joining us tonight. Always good to see you. All right. I believe we have reached all of the organizations that have reached out, and so now we are able to open it up for questions. Anyone else who has joined is welcome to ask questions. Randy, I do see you. We have one more person, and that is Randy Rafter. Randy, can you raise your hand? I can't find you on our list. Oh, there you are. All right.
Go. All right. I can never unmute myself. It just happens this way. First off, thank you
to the best of us, Randy.
Dr. Marty, it's good seeing you as always. Mayor Jones, thank you so much for having this town hall. Dr. Marty knows me well, so I'm going to not speak too much or too loud, but I am the president of St. Louis Black Gay and Lesbian Pride here in St. Louis. We are the nation's second oldest Black gay LGBT organization, pride organization in the country. So we're very proudful of our history, serving for over 25 years. With that being said, you guys mentioned a lot of great things, especially recognizing the disparities that happen within our community. Unfortunately, when we look at those disparities within that are brought up in so many numbers, if you tag LGBT and specifically Black and or people of color, you'll see those numbers almost double, if not triple, in most of those situations. So it's important for us to have the questions around building what we call holistic equability. With that being said, as far as Black Pride's mission is to build equity within the community that we're serving. And with that, we look at it from a holistic approach, from health, economic development, from education to civil and social justice. It's important for us to look at those different matters because ultimately, LGBT people, and specifically people of color within the community, are some of the most underserved and needing these resources the most, especially when it comes down to our Black trans women of color. So it's important for us to make sure that we stand and have this conversation with you. But I will offer, as a part of a conversation, is that we look for things in an equitable way of looking things at holistically. I think the only way that we're going to really truly be able to reach and build St. Louis to be honestly, we could be the LGBT Mecca of the Midwest. We have the potential, we have the opportunities, we have to strive, especially under you all's leadership, to make great things happen here. So with that, I push you all to continue to have the conversations. Dr. Marty, you asked one thing about the silos that we have within our community. One thing is we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have a seat at the table. What happens is so many times we'll see that some of the more bigger or more prominent parts of the mainstream of the community is seen, but yet those who are struggling at the most, voices are never heard. Yeah, we applied marriage equality, but marriage equality was at the bottom of the list when it came down to the Black queer community. So it's important for us to recognize and look at it to whereas there's other things and other priorities that we have to put first. I mean, having a roof over one's head and food in their stomach is a more priority versus me walking down the aisle. I'll be real with you. I need to survive first. And so those are key things and key issues I would like to bring to the table. But the key push in that is, of course, making sure that the table is there. And if not, I'll build a table myself. So I will yield the rest of my time. But thank you, ladies, for your leadership and all the great things that you're doing. Dr. Marty is like my big sister, all the work that we're doing. I also serve as the co-chair for the Planning Council. So I'm excited, I'm the new co-chair. So it's exciting to do the work in HIV prevention, but also I push because I'm the person I hold people accountable as much as I hold myself. So I'll thank you for your time. I will say there's some, just as a tidbit, there's some applications that have been sent to the mayor's office for approval for Planning Council that I want to put out there because we have some terms that are up that needs to be looked at as soon as possible.
We're on it. We're on it. Good to see you, Randy.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thanks for joining us tonight. All right. So now we're moving into Q&A for real this time, unless I missed somebody else.
There's some Q&A in the Q&A tab.
Yeah. We'll start with one question and then we will turn it over to, I see Alderman Stevens' hand up. So We had Tim Shepard ask, while we wait on federal and state legislation such as MONA, what is the city of St. Louis about to implement to protect the rights of LGBTQ people from being fired or evicted for being LGBTQ? We also have a question from Tim about conversion therapy. How can we pursue changing this to what it is, torture, and pursue criminal charges for those who advocate and pursue it within the city?
Ooh, that's a lot, Tim. So, you're right. We're waiting on federal and state legislation for MONA. And when I was in the State House, I co-sponsored MONA all the 4 years I was there. But I will say that while I'm not sure if we have passed legislation recently, I would be open to the members of our LGBTQ caucus here drafting legislation to make sure that we lift up our LGBTQ neighbors as a protected class. And I know that as far as for me and my administration, I've tried to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to hiring, not only on my staff, but also in the cabinet. I think we have the most diverse cabinet ever, or cabinet and staff, probably in the history of this city. And I'm not just talking about your normal categories of just, Black, white, Asian, Latino, but a little bit of everything. Because you have to have a broad and inclusive table in order to get a diversity of thought and diversity of thought leaders bringing new ideas to the table. And so we'll just continue to press forward. And Shane has said, we do have a law prohibiting employment and housing discrimination in the city, inclusive of trans and gender identity. And we have already banned conversion therapy in the city of St. Louis. So there are your answers, Tim, from the wonderful Alderman Shane Cohn, who was the only member of the LGBTQ plus caucus up until recently.
Thank you for that answer. And speaking of, I see not only Alderman Stevens, but also Alderman Cohn with their hands up. So I'm just going to bring them both into the fold. Hello.
Hi, hello. Am I first, or is Alderman Cohn up?
Go ahead, Alderman Stevens.
Excellent, thank you. It's a bit jarring to jump from one to the other, but I just wanted to take a moment tonight and sort of speak to how monumental this is. St. Louis is a city that is older than the United States. And I argue that there's not any facet of American history, any monumental facet of American history that's not somehow tied to St. Louis, relevant to St. Louis, or originates in St. Louis, especially for our LGBT community. We had the Mandrake Society, we had our own Stonewall, and now we have a mayoral administration with Director Mo. I understand you prefer Mo. Excellent, just call me Bill. With Dr. Hlatchoyo Davis, with our LGBTQ liaison, Nick, and the mayor who supports our community, not reactively, but proactively. And I just wanted to speak to how monumental that is as a member of this community, and how it's laying the groundwork, and how so very important it is that you rise to the occasion, Director Mo, Mr. Dunn, and how I am confident that you both will. And other than that, that's all I've got. Just thank you for your support. Thank you for your representation. Thank you for giving us a seat at the table. And thank you to Alderman Cohn for paving the way for me. That is also appreciated. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hi, Shane.
Hi, Madam Mayor. Good evening. I just want to echo my thanks. Alderman Stevens really kind of hit the nail on the head. I've been an alderman for over 13 years now. Probably, I think, number 4 in seniority over at the Board of Aldermen at this point. But this is the first time that an administration in my time in office has convened, various community members throughout the LGBT community to have a candid conversation around what their needs are, and opening up the government to the people to be able to assist them in their challenges and needs. And while we might not be able to rise to the occasion on every single situation, it's important that we at least know where we are and how we can get to where we need to be, to kind of paraphrase Dr. Mahdi. I just want to thank everyone else for being here as well. And, certainly look forward to working with everyone in the community and the administration as we make it a better place for the LGBTQIA plus community in St. Louis.
I'd love to hop in real quick. Thank you, Shane and Bill, for like Shane mentioned, Alderman Cohn mentioned, we do have an ordinance that helps prevent that. That ordinance is me. That is my agency. That is my job. That is us. That is helping to do that work on the ground. I am heartened to be a part of this conversation, to see so many people in the chat that I've worked with in the past, in my work at the State House and trying to do this work in the city. And to see, it is a legacy, to see someone like Alderman Cohn. There are people that don't understand 13 years ago as a gay person is a very different story than, what it is in a space and in a community and in an administration that can recognize people in their totality and not bring people down for anything that they bring to the table. So being a part of this conversation, being a part of the work with Alderman Cohn, with Alderman Stevens, with Dr. Mahdi and her previous work, it's like a dream come true. But there are still those frustrations of the barriers that we face in getting solutions to the table and getting solutions to fruition, not just speaking on them out loud. So again, having these conversations out in the open, please, if you have questions, comments, concerns, shoot me an email, give me a call, Maxi, we can talk all day long. Again, my North Star in my entire life has been working for what the people need. And in order to know what that is, we have to talk about it. And sometimes it can be a tough conversation. A lot of these things are not easy. Employment is your livelihood. Housing is a roof over your head. Public accommodations are having dignity in public and being able to be seen and be accepted and be acknowledged and being loved in public. And so I just want to give in my little piece of the corner. I feel like I've just been sitting here just admiring and feeling inspired by the work and the people that have come into this conversation. And I'm grateful to have that work continue and that process move forward.
There were very few people that people alerted me to their presence or them coming here than Mo. 3 different people in leadership texted me, emailed me and said, she's coming, she's fabulous, you have to meet. And we had a lunch date that set just before the COVID surge. And of course, as usual, COVID hated on us. And we are scheduled to meet, I think, within the next 2 weeks, right, Mo? And so I'm very excited about it, because sometimes when you're trying to figure out your own department, you lose sight of the power in interdepartmental collaborations and leadership. So one of the things I think both Mo and I are looking forward to bring back to you is what happens when we kind of come together like Voltron and think about ways that we can move forward our priorities. So I wanted to just put that out there to first say you are fabulous, you're incredible, and just listening to you inspires me, but that I'm really more so excited about really delving into what we can do together around this. Because sometimes, like I said, I may call out silos in general, but there can be silos in city government because we lose sight of what the interdepartmental collaborations can look like. So
I love all of this. And I love the nerdy Voltron reference. It made me so happy. So thank you, Alderman, for tuning in tonight and speaking up. Before
I also noticed that Alderwoman Tina Peel was also in the audience. I don't know if she wants to come up and say a few words.
Oh, I see a hand. Yeah, we're going to bring her in and then, yeah. Alderman Peel, oh, there you are.
Yours. You're on mute.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, wonderful. Mayor Jones, thank you for putting on this town hall and bringing us together. It is really important for our community to come together and to discuss these issues open in the public, and to have our voice to be heard. And I look forward to working with everyone here who is present and everybody else who wants to help in terms of making sure that our community, the LGBTQI community, is thriving, is healthy, and gets stronger. And so I appreciate you putting this forum and this town hall together, Mayor Jones. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you. I hear kitties in the background.
Yes, those are the stray cats. Those are the semi-feral cats. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, do we get to see them?
Do we get to see them? No. Oh, I see one.
Oh. Thank you, Alderwoman. I appreciate you tuning in tonight. So we did have a question in the chat, which I wanted to make sure that we addressed, and that was this will be the tough question for the night. The city's current nuisance laws. Oh, my chat reset. City's current nuisance laws force survivors of domestic violence to choose between not reporting the abuse to the police or getting penalized, evicted by landlords for being a nuisance property. Can Mayor Jones, can you provide some sort of perspective on this topic?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that.
Oh yeah. So I believe the premise is that if a call is made on a property on so many times that it'll be marked as a nuisance property within the city, and that puts especially domestic violence and survivors as well as persons from the LGBTQ community into a predicament. What can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things I advocated for when I ran for office was a tenant's bill of rights, and we still are not there yet. I think that if we had a tenant's bill of rights in the city of St. Louis passed by the Board of Aldermen, so the alderman on the call, if you're listening, I think would go a long way in those types of protections, because we want to make sure that people feel safe in their homes and have the authority to report report domestic violence without fear of being evicted or without fear of their apartment being designated as a nuisance. So there are also, things that we're working on. I'm sure that Mo is working on in her office to make sure that we hold up protections of renters as much as we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Jones. And I do see Alderwoman Rice mentioned in the chat that the Board of Aldermen has worked to prevent domestic violence calls from counting as nuisance calls, and she is looking for that ordinance. Thank you, Alderwoman. And I did see one other hand up. Brian, I know, has been waiting for a hot minute, so I'm going to bring him in. Brian Pearson. Did it work? Did we lose Brian? Oh, no, there he is.
Hello. Why is it? Okay, hold on. Let me step back. All right. Hello. Thank y'all so much for having me and allowing me to come onto the panelist as a screen. My name is Brian Pearson. I'm the founder of edurain.org. It is a platform that has helps people apply for 20,000 scholarships and has a free housing search. We've raised about $120,000. We've helped over 360 people get access to financial aid in the past year and a half. We were our trans finalists last year, and we're getting ready to do our first off-campus housing event at WashU with landlords and students. Thank you. One thing that we're asking is, so like, do you guys have a citywide initiative for LGBT scholarships and LGBT student support when it comes to, like, you know, students who are, you know, like, as a former foster care kid myself, I remember not having any support, any kind of mentorship role or kind of point out direction. That makes sense. So LGBT scholarships, citywide initiative, and then LGBT mentorship program that you guys collaborate with LGBT organizations.
So when I was treasurer, or thank you, Brian, for that question. When I was treasurer, I started the College Kids Children's Savings Account program that gives a college savings account for every child entering kindergarten in a public school in the city of St. Louis. And it's loaded with the first $50, and that account grows when they or their families do get things like good attendance, match savings dollar for dollar to the first $100 saved, and when parents participate in financial education courses. To date, over 20,000 children have over $1.5 million saved. And that's for every child entering kindergarten, and our oldest cohort is in the 6th grade. Currently, we are trying to book in that program. So if I had a magic wand, I would love to make sure that we have scholarship opportunities or last dollar scholarship opportunities for every child graduating from a public school in the city of St. Louis, or offering free community college. Because we know that sometimes those first couple of years, you don't know what you want to do, or community college is a great stepping stone to the middle class, to nursing careers, to careers with the trades, and other vocational careers. So please note that we are working on trying to stand up some programs that will make sure that all of our children can thrive once they graduate from high school. Because if I had my wish, every child graduating from high school would walk across the stage with their diploma, with an offer letter going somewhere, with a copy of their FAFSA and a copy of their credit report, because nothing changes your life more than love or God or a 100-point increase in your credit score.
I do want to give you some alarming information when it comes to housing. As we do our research with, we've done a survey of about 250 landlords across the St. Louis area, and we've started to see some very discriminatory practice when it comes to price gouging, and also asking, is every kid going to be on financial aid that's going to be on your platform? If so, can we make sure that can we scoot those people out of the way, as people are vying to build more luxury apartments around the St. Louis area. It's also kicking out folks to be able to find more affordable housing. So that's one of the things, if something with the city, as we're trying to create a program for landlords that have affordable rents to be able to get more in front of students and more in front of different populations. Because the people that have the luxurious apartments, they're going to spend top dollar to get, the services to get people in, because and like, for example, the average apartment around some of the colleges that we're working around is like $2,600 for a 2-bedroom. Yeah, that's not affordable at all. So, I see there's some folks in there. Yes, there's a guy named Darnell that is in the treasurer's department. That is the processor, I believe. Well, he works underneath the treasurer. There's a lot of people in your office. I get that. So we pitched your treasurer at the UMSL DEI Accelerator pitch day. We have to do another follow-up with him, but we would like to work with you and your college savings kids program. We do know that if you start your sophomore year, your chances of getting a free education or for your significantly increases. even if you don't, you're not eligible for that year, writing that application that first time, getting into the system of applications to coming back that second year. A lot of kids don't come back that second and third year to apply for a scholarship. We do know those things. But so I thank you for this dialogue and inviting me. I'm not as famous as any of the other people in here. You probably have never heard of me before. So I'm just really happy, Also, I'm a Pearson. I have 2 generations of family and politics here in St. Louis. And hopefully one day I'll be able to create the step and be the third and the first foster care kid in my family to be in politics ever. So you never know.
So you made a good point about affordable housing. And I don't know if you've been following the work of Neil Richardson at the SLDC. One of the things that we've done since he's been on staff is, as there are more developers that are asking for tax incentives for their projects, we have been negotiating with those developers to include affordable housing in those projects. Or so, for example, there's a project just by the stadium, by the new soccer stadium, that had 300 some odd units, and we negotiated setting aside almost 100 units for affordable housing, because we realized that the janitors, the maintenance workers, the nurses, the teachers, will also want to live in nice apartments and live closer to places where they work. So in all of the recent negotiations that we have done since I have been mayor, there has been an inclusion of affordable housing in all of those projects. And that is our North Star going forward. We also just recently announced the Housing Fund, which is a $20 million fund that's going to build new homes from affordable all the way to market rate in North St. Louis or in parts of South St. Louis and qualified census tracts using dollars from ARPA. We have, and also in April, we'll be rolling out our Economic Justice Action Plan. And one of the key pillars of that plan is affordable housing.
I thank you for that. As a former 10 years into the restaurant industry, I can tell you that, looking for apartments and housing, that's something that it was really hard, because hard to prove your income, you know what I'm saying? Because that conference coming in St. Louis, you're making bank, you might make 500 that weekend, but you might only make 500 next week because there's no conference in town. It's hard to equate what your actual income is. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I am really thankful that I even got this chance to even talk to you and have a productive conversation.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for joining us. And so I'm going to close us out with one more question. And that is in the Q&A, and it's for Dr. Mahdi. It's about mental health access. We have tried to provide better mental health services for the LGBTQ community, but we find it both difficult to find the right service provider with the right experience, especially with the intersectionality of LGBTQ plus and minority identities, and to access the population even as queer members ourselves. We'd love to hear the city's thought to better strengthen mental health service access and availability for the community. Dr. Mahdi, do you have any input on that?
Wow, you guys are on it. This is such a priority for me. When Mayor Jones interviewed me for this position, I remember being nervous and having my notes. And one of the first things she asked me was, what would be your priorities if you came into this? And we connected because we had shared priorities. And those were that we both really were committed to the fact that we have to have in parallel COVID and non-COVID related priorities. I spoke earlier about how we let some of those go to the fore, and mental health is not one that was just sort of went to the wayside, but increased, it worsened throughout this pandemic because of the additional, stress, depression, anxiety, and other health conditions that arose. And so I've been very clear and consistent in talking about my in parallel COVID and non-COVID related priorities, of which one is behavioral health. So let's talk about that. I talked a little bit about the lack of capacity in my department. The reality is there is no in-house bureau, section, department that is dedicated to behavioral health. So we have to build it up. I'm proud to say that the budget that I submitted to the city last week included a new bureau for behavioral health and chronic diseases. My hope is that we will be able to get some initial funding to start that. But that's not enough, right? If I'm literally building a behavioral health bureau from scratch, that doesn't answer your question and your immediate need. So what I've been doing is having biweekly meetings with two leaders, Will Pinky from the mayor's office, who's been doing a lot of the work around behavioral health thus far and is really a leader and an advocate. And then Serena Mohammed, a force. I mean, I bow down in the shadow of Serena consistently, who has started to work with me around how we can use some existing ARPA dollars and make proposals for further ones around behavioral health. Because you're right, the intersectionality between behavioral health and minoritized communities, of which the LGBTQIA plus community is one, is important and hasn't been addressed. So what we've discussed so far is a few things. Number one, you're going to get tired of hearing me say this, data, right? Data to inform where the deserts are for behavioral health needs. But this is a big issue. So thankfully, Serena started talking to me about a few things. Number one, the Behavioral Health Network has actually got a comprehensive list of the existing behavioral health resources that specifically are available for vulnerable populations, right? So we're going to work on that list, expand it, and have a one-stop shop on the health department's website for where folks can go. Past that, we need to then increase capacity. And I know this. I was an HIV provider literally less than 6 months ago. And I can tell you, whenever one of my patients came to me and had a behavioral health need, I could make a referral knowing damn well they weren't going to get into a clinic for at least 9 months to a year. That's unacceptable, right? But that's the reality of where we are clinically. So I'm trying to meet with service providers in the region to start talking about how we can cut those times down and have linkage to care that is accessible and gets people where they are. But where I'm going to be very honest and transparent and saying, I don't know, and I'm very grateful that you provided this question, is I haven't addressed directly the intersectionality between this community and mental health needs. And so I would love if you could email me directly. I'll put my email in the chat. It's also on the city's website. If you have resources about who I should be connecting with to make sure that you are not left behind here. We've been working with a lot of people who work in Black and Brown communities, and there's obviously that intersectionality with the community, but I want to be mindful of the fact that I'm thinking about resources and ways to link to care for this community. So if the person who asked the question doesn't feel like I answered the question, I'm very sensitive about that. Please just follow up in the chat or unmute yourself. But that is some of the areas that we started moving forward this initiative to use existing ARPA dollars and think about what we want to do with future ones around equity with Will and Serena.
Thank you, Dr. Mahdi. So that concludes Q&A. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. This really does mean a lot to us, and I was loving the collaborations going on in the chat. People are connecting with one another, which is exactly what we wanted from this. Mayor Jones, did you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This has been a fabulous opportunity to learn from each other, to learn what our needs are. And I am hopeful that this is just a starting point for more conversations about how we can collaborate and get out of our silos to help each other for many, many, many years to come. Because again, the North Star is making sure that St. Louis is a place where everyone can thrive, no matter the color of your skin, the zip code you live in, who you love, or how you worship.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. And with that, we are signing off. Thank you all again, and we will be in touch.
Thank you. God bless you, everybody.
Sorry, had to leave the room just the wrong time.